Okay, let's dive in. We're looking at a war today that was incredibly short. I mean, just 113 days of actual fighting.
Yeah, it often gets overshadowed, doesn't it? Almost like a
Yeah,
blip.
right. But this short conflict totally flipped the script on America's role in the world.
Absolutely. It's the moment the U.S. really steps onto the global stage, moving away from just focusing inward. We're talking, of course, about the Spanish-American War.
So 1898, what's the world like then? What's the mood in America?
Well, you've got this backdrop of, like, empires expanding everywhere. Technologically, warfare is changing too. And in the U.S., there's this long shadow of George Washington's advice, right?
The farewell address, avoid entangling alliances.
Exactly. But by the 1890s, that's bumping up against something new. America's industries are booming. Factories are churning out more stuff than Americans can buy.
So there's pressure to look outwards for markets.
Huge pressure. New markets, yeah, but also resources, places for naval ships to refuel coaling stations. It's this new spirit of nationalism mixed with, frankly, economic ambition.
Kind of makes that old isolationist stance feel a bit outdated, maybe. For some people, anyway.
For a growing number, definitely. They saw expansion as, almost inevitable. Manifest destiny, but on a global scale this time.
And the flashpoint for all this, it wasn't far away, was it?
Nope. Just 90 miles off the coast of Florida. Cuba. That's where the fuse was lit.
Cuba, under Spanish rule for, what, 400 years?
4 centuries, yeah. So you can imagine the resentment was deep. By 1895, a major rebellion for independence kicks off again.
Led by Jose Marti, right? The poet and revolutionary.
That's him. A really powerful symbol for Cuban freedom. But Spain's reaction this time was particularly harsh.
General Wheeler.
General Valeriano Weyler. The American press quickly nicknamed him the Butcher. His strategy was shocking, really. He forced hundreds of thousands of Cuban civilians from the countryside into these fortified towns, concentration camps, essentially.
Why? What was the goal there?
To completely isolate the rebels, cut off their support network, food, shelter, recruits, everything for the civilian population.
But the conditions in those camps.
Appalling. Tens of thousands died. Not from fighting, but from starvation and disease spreading like wildfire. Just horrific suffering.
And this story, this tragedy, it lands right in the lap of a new kind of American media, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. This is prime fuel for what we call yellow journalism. You got to remember, newspapers in the 1890s were like the social media of their day. They didn't just report news, they actively shaped it.
And you had those two giants battling it out, Hearst and Pulitzer.
William Randolph Hearst with the New York Journal, Joseph Pulitzer with the New York World. It was this intense circulation war. They needed readers, and drama sold paper.
So they sensationalized everything.
Totally. Stories of Spanish cruelty, torture, starvation, often wildly exaggerated, sometimes even fabricated. Pictures of suffering women and children, heroic Cuban rebels. It was all designed to pull at the heartstrings, stir up outrage.
And sell more newspapers, make war seem not just possible, but necessary, almost righteous.
Exactly. It was performance journalism, really. There's that famous story, maybe true, maybe not, about Hearst and his illustrator, Remington.
Oh, yeah, you furnished the pictures.
And I'll furnish the war.
Right.
Whether he actually said it or not, it perfectly captures the attitude. War was good for business.
So the public is getting riled up, demanding action, but they still needed a trigger, a specific event.
And tragically, they got one. The USS Maine.
Okay, set the scene. February 15th, 1898.
The American battleship USS Maine is anchored in Havana Harbor. The official reason it's there is to protect American citizens and property during the Cuban unrest.
And then, boom.
A massive explosion rips through the front of the ship. It sinks almost immediately. Over 260 American sailors killed. A terrible tragedy.
And the cause.
That's the crucial part. Nobody knew for sure. Was it an accident on board? Maybe unstable coal dust in the bunkers ignited? That's actually a plausible theory. Or was it a Spanish mine?
But the newspapers didn't wait for an investigation, did they?
Not a chance.
Yeah.
Hearst and Pulitzer's papers immediately screamed foul play. Headlines blared, Spanish treachery.
And that gave birth to the rallying cry.
Remember the Maine, to hell with Spain. It echoed everywhere. The press basically convicted Spain in the court of public opinion overnight.
That kind of public fury, it must have put immense pressure on President McKinley.
Immense. He'd actually been hesitant about war, but politically, the tide turned completely. The pressure from the public, fueled by the press, was just too strong to ignore.
So Congress acts.
Yep. On April 25, 1898, the United States officially declared war on Spain.
Okay, so war is declared over Cuba, but the first big battle happens. Some were completely different.
That's right. Halfway around the world in the Philippines, which is, kind of surprising if you're just thinking about Cuba.
Why the Philippines first? Spain still had colonies there.
Exactly. The Philippines was a key Spanish colony in Asia. And for the U.S., especially figures like Teddy Roosevelt, who was Assistant Secretary of the Navy then, and naval thinkers like Mahan.
This was about projecting
Yep.
power, right?
Yeah.
Taking out Spain's navy globally.
Precisely, and grabbing strategic locations. So
Yeah.
Commodore George Dewey sails the U.S. Asiatic Squadron into Manila Bay on May 1st, 1898.
And that battle, it was incredibly one-sided.
Astonishingly so. Dewey's modern warships just demolished the outdated Spanish Pacific Fleet. It was over in a matter of hours.
The entire Spanish fleet destroyed.
Wiped out. And the kicker. Get this, not a single American ship was lost, not one American combat death.
Wow. Dewey instantly becomes a national hero.
Huge hero. It was this stunning display of American naval might. Sends a message to the world, really.
Okay, so back in the Caribbean, what's happening on the ground in Cuba?
The focus shifts there in June. American troops start landing, and it's quite a mix of forces.
You've got the regular army soldiers.
Yep. Then volunteer units, and crucially, you have the African-American regiments.
With Buffalo soldiers.
Right.
You really need to highlight their role.
Absolutely. These were experienced professional soldiers. Many were veterans of the campaigns out west. They were disciplined, knew how to fight, and they were arguably better prepared for the climate and conditions than many of the volunteers.
They were vital, but often get left out of the popular story.
They're tragically overlooked sometimes. And then, of course, you have the most famous volunteer unit.
The Rough Riders and Theodore Roosevelt.
Teddy himself. He actually quit his desk job as Assistant Secretary of the Navy specifically to get into the action. He helped raise this volunteer cavalry regiment, a mix of cowboys, college athletes, adventurers.
He wanted the glory.
He absolutely did. And he found it at the Battle of San Juan Hill, July 1st, 1898.
This is probably the most famous image of the war, Roosevelt charging up the hill.
It is, though the popular image often forgets who else was charging right alongside them. The Rough Riders and the Buffalo Soldiers took those Spanish positions together. It was brutal fighting, hand-to-hand in some places, up Kettle Hill and San Juan Hill.
And that victory really cemented Roosevelt's image as a war hero.
Oh, absolutely. Made him a household name overnight. And that battle was really the decisive blow in Cuba.
Things wrapped up quickly after that.
Very quickly. The Spanish fleet bottled up in Santiago Harbor, tried to escape, got destroyed. Santiago surrendered mid-July. And an armistice, a ceasefire, was signed on August 12th.
Just 113 days after the war started. Incredible.
Galore, but huge consequences, which become clear with the peace treaty.
The Treaty of Paris, signed in December 1898. What were the terms?
Spain basically gives up its empire. They relinquish control of Cuba, though its independence would be complicated.
We'll go back to that. What else?
Spain cedes Puerto Rico and the island of Guam to the United States. And crucially, they sell the Philippines to the U.S. for $20 million.
So overnight, the U.S. has these new overseas territories. An empire, really.
An empire, no question. But let's talk about the human cost for the Americans for a second, because there's a really stark statistic here.
Okay.
About 3,000 American lives were lost in the war effort overall. But guess how many died in actual combat?
I'm guessing. Not that many.
Fewer than 400. Less than 15%.
So the vast majority disease.
Exactly. Malaria, typhoid, yellow fever, dysentery. The real killer wasn't Spanish bullets. It was bacteria and viruses. It shows you the limits of medicine and logistics at the time. They weren't prepared for tropical diseases.
That's staggering. A powerful reminder of the non-combat dangers of war back then.
Definitely. And the costs, the moral complications, they didn't stop there. Especially in the Philippines.
Right. You mentioned the U.S. bought the Philippines, but the Filipinos had been fighting Spain too, hadn't they, for their own independence?
They had, led by Emilio Aguinaldo. They had actually fought alongside the Americans against the Spanish, thinking the U.S. was there to help them achieve freedom.
So they thought they were allies.
Pretty much. So you can imagine their reaction when, after the Spanish were gone, the U.S. decided, actually, we're keeping the Philippines as an American territory.
Betrayal.
That's how Aguinaldo and his followers saw it. So they turned their guns on the Americans. This kicked off the Philippine-American War.
Which was much longer and bloodier than the war with Spain.
Far longer. Far bloodier. Lasted from 1899 to 1902, some fighting even longer. It was a brutal guerrilla war. Tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of Filipinos died. And it raised really uncomfortable questions back in the U.S.
Like, What are we doing? We supposedly fought Spain for freedom, and now we're crushing another independence movement.
Precisely. It sparked a huge debate. Is America becoming the very thing it was founded to oppose, a colonial empire? This led to the Anti-Imperialist League.
With some big names involved, right?
Yeah, famous figures like Mark Twain, the author, Andrew Carnegie, the industrialist. They argued that ruling over other people against their will violated core American democratic principles. It was a fierce debate about the soul of the country, really.
So looking at the aftermath, what were the long-term results? How did these new territories fit into the U.S.?
Well, Cuba got its independence, sort of, but the U.S. insisted on the Platt Amendment being added to the Cuban Constitution.
What did that do?
It gave the U.S. the right to intervene in Cuban affairs whenever it felt necessary to maintain stability. And it forced Cuba to lease territory for a naval base.
Guantanamo Bay, which the U.S. still holds today.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So independence, but with major strings attached. Puerto Rico became a U.S. territory. Its residents eventually got U.S. citizenship, but it's never become a state. Guam became and remains a key strategic base in the Pacific.
And the Philippines.
Remained a U.S. territory, a major foothold in Asia, until after World War II in 1946.
So the war reshaped the map and America's place on it. And it reshaped American politics, too, largely through one person.
Theodore Roosevelt.
Right.
That charge up San Juan Hill catapulted him. National hero status.
He becomes governor of New York, then vice president.
And then President McKinley is assassinated in 1901. Suddenly, TR, the war hero, is the youngest president in American history.
And his whole approach to foreign policy seems shaped by that 1898 experience, doesn't it?
Completely.
Hmm.
He believed in American power, particularly naval power, and America's duty, as he saw it, to engage globally. It all feeds into his famous doctrine.
Speak softly and carry a big stick, projecting power.
That's the essence of it. The Spanish-American War gave him and America that big stick.
So, summing up this whirlwind, 113 days, it's the end of one empire.
Spain's centuries-old empire effectively dissolves.
And the dramatic beginning of another.
The birth of America's global age. It smashed those old isolationist ideas for good and really set the stage for the next century of American foreign policy intervention, global presence, the works.
We went from Washington warning against foreign entanglements to having bases and territories across the globe, all in less than 4 months of fighting.
It's a stunning transformation. And it began, remember, framed as this noble crusade to free Cuba.
But it quickly became about power, strategy, and, well, empire.
Which leaves us with that lingering question, the same one people were debating back in 1898. When you look back, was America's intervention primarily about justice and liberation for Cuba? Or was it more about seizing an opportunity, expanding influence, and starting down the path of empire under a different flag? It's a question that arguably still echoes in debates about America's role in the world today.